Hey everyone, welcome to Amanda's Book Corner. I'm Amanda, and this is my review of the Lady Tempts and Heir by Harper St. This is the third book in our Gilded Age Heiresses series. I read the first two last year and I love them both, and so I was so excited to read this one. Special thanks to NetGalley and Berkley for the advanced copy, and I'm so excited for everyone to read this one. It comes out tomorrow, which is February 22nd, and I love this book, so I really hope everyone gets a chance to read this book as soon as it's out. Last year, thanks to Book of the Month and Eva Dunmore, I discovered the first book in the series, which is The Heiress Gets a Duke. I loved this one, and so I was really excited to read the second one. And so as soon as it came out, I got the second in the series, The Devil and the Heiress. And I actually ended up loving this one even more than the first one. So you might notice that so far I've read each book in this series in a different format. First was a hardcover from Book of the Month, then this little mass market paperback. The third one I just read as an ebook from NetGalley. But I'm the kind of person who likes all the books in her series to match, and so I did go out and pick up the mass market paperback of the first one, so I have the first two here. And as soon as the Lady Tempts and Heir comes out, I'll be picking that one up as well. So I'll have a whole series all in the same format. Okay, so let's talk about the Lady Tempts and Heir, which is the third book in this series. So if you read the first two books in the series, you'll remember that the Crenshaw parents really have certain goals for their children. In the first book, they're pushing their youngest daughter, Violet, to get married. They had their eyes set on her marrying a duke. Although in the end, we know what happened. Violet didn't end up with the duke. That was August. In the second book, Violet got her romance with a different character, Christian Halston, the Lord of Lee. In the Lady Tempts and Heir, we get to follow two characters that we met in the previous two books, Maxwell Crenshaw, who is the older brother of August and Violet, and Lady Helena March, who is a young widow who has also befriended those two sisters. So the driving force behind this book is the Crenshaw parents once again. They really do have their eyes set on all their children being married, and this time, due to a health scare that the father, Griswold, had, he is really feeling his mortality, and he wants Maxwell, his eldest and his only son, to get married and have children to carry on that Crenshaw line. And we know he's a ruthless and manipulative man, and he's not above blackmailing his own children to force them to do what he wants. And so he has certain incentives to kind of push Maxwell along in finding a bride. Meanwhile, Lady Helena March has been a widow for 5 years, after a very brief marriage, and she's working to get a charity up and off the ground, but she's facing a lot of difficulties with that. Part of it is that she's trying to help unwed mothers and their children, as well as orphans. And people have a hard time with that. They think that these women are fallen women, and they think that Lady Helena will taint her reputation by working with them or helping them, or even worse, she might become a fallen woman herself. And so she's facing opposition from people of her class, and she's having a hard time getting donors. And one thing that would really help her gaining respect and donors would be to have a man by her side, someone like a husband who would actually support her cause and encourage others to support her cause as well. So both Max and Helena have reasons to pursue a kind of relationship, a kind of engagement or marriage. Of course, neither one of them actually wants to get married. They're kind of friends, and so they decide to embark on a fake relationship with each other. This is just to fool Max's dad long enough that the incentive that he has for him expires. And it's also long enough for Lady Helena to get her charity really up and off the ground and running properly. So these two begin a fake courtship, which will eventually lead to a fake engagement, and their plan is for Lady Helena to dump Max in a very embarrassing way for him in order to maintain her own reputation. So that's their plan, but of course this is a romance, and so we know that there's going to be some other feelings that come into it that kind of force them to change their plans a little bit. So I enjoyed meeting Max and Helena in the previous two books in the series, and I really loved getting to know them much further in this book. Max is very much a loyal and family-oriented person. He loves his sisters more than anything, and he'll do anything to make sure that they're happy and protected. And this kind of loyalty does extend to how he eventually starts treating Helena as well. And so I really like that he's a kind and loyal and dependable person, and he's always willing to stand up for what's right and for the people that he cares about against any naysayers or people that would put harm in their way. Max is also American, and he's kind of described as being a little bit more rugged than the English gentleman that Lady Helena is used to interacting with. He's still refined. He's still a rich man who has grown up with fine things around him. He knows how to dance. He knows how to behave with polite society. But she describes a certain ruggedness about him, which I think is really interesting to see, kind of different character than the character we saw with, say, Evan and Christian in the previous two books. And for her part, I also really like Lady Helena. In the first two books, we heard that she was witty and intelligent and generous, and we really see that shine through a lot in this book as well. She really is a charitable and kind person who wants to help people, but I also like getting to know kind of her other side about how she's so socially and politically minded. I do like how she defends her charity and how she describes it to people who don't really understand what she's doing. And I like her views on the world and the double standards that she sees between men and women and between expectations of women and when they have kids. She talks about how women who are married and don't have kids are looked down on almost as much as women who are unmarried and do have kids. And so that's an early observation that I think was really interesting. I also like how she points out other issues that she sees with the world later on in the book. Likewise, Max also stands up for rights that I think really ring true for today. One subplot that he faces has to do with the Crenshaw Iron Works workers, and he talks about workers' rights, their right to a living wage, and the right to unionize. And so I really do like seeing these things that are relevant in the 1870s, but how they also do ring true for us now in the 2020s. Max and Helena are aligned in a lot of ways. They are aligned pretty well politically and socially in terms of their senses of injustices and their desire to help people make everyone more equal and more safe. I also like how they have a lot of witty banter between them. They are a little bit argumentative. They do get offended at things the other says, and they do have their little spats with each other, but it's not overly done. I wouldn't say this is like an enemies to lovers romance. They are friends, but they definitely have their disagreements about certain things, and they're not afraid to call each other out on them. They do have a fairly sturdy relationship despite not knowing each other that well. This book begins in November 1875, which is about 6 months after the events of the previous book when Helena and Max were working to find Violet and rescue her from Christian. And so that's when they really got to know each other in the previous book. This book starts off 6 months later, and they know each other pretty well, but not super well. But I do like that they have a certain foundation that we didn't see with the previous two couples in the other books. They have some understanding of each other. They have a little bit of a friendship. They definitely have an attraction to each other, but they both kind of just casually ignore that. But eventually, this attraction and their compatible personalities and their compatible goals with helping people do really start to push them together in a way that I think they're not entirely ready for. And especially on Helena's part, she does have a lot of reasons why she's resistant to having a real relationship with Max. And that leads me to another point that I really like, is that in this book we see a different kind of conflict than I normally see in romances. To be fair, I'm a little bit new to the genre. I've only started reading romances in the last few years, so maybe it's more common than I realize, but there is a certain point of conflict, which I don't want to reveal right now, but there's a certain point of conflict that I found really interesting, and I do like that it's an external thing that neither Max nor Helena has any control over. They do have 2 points of conflict. One of them they could control or at least change their lifestyles, but one of them would have to up and move, basically. But the other point of conflict, they can't really change what that is. There are certain resolutions that I think are set up in this book, even though they're not actually explored in this book, but I think there are certain resolutions that they could explore later on. But even so, I did like that this is a conflict that Helena really grappled with a lot and was afraid to tell Max about, and I love how it all came together in the end. I think Max and Helena are a really sweet couple. I think they're a more natural and sweeter couple than the previous 2 in the other books. I mean, I think August and Evan were really fun together, and I think Christian and Violet were a lot of fun together too. These ones, of course, they're fun. I really enjoyed this book, but I think they have a more natural compatibility with each other, if that makes sense. And so theirs is a romance that's a little bit sweeter than the other 2 throughout the book, as opposed to saving that sweetness for like a little bit later on. Speaking of the other characters, we do get a little bit of insight into what's going on with Violet and Christian, as well as with August and Evan. And so I do like to see what's going on with them months or even a year or 2 after the events of the previous books. I also like seeing the setup for the 4th book in the series, which will be between Camille and Jacob Thorne, so I was really excited to see that. Some setup for it later on in this book and a little bit of a hint of them at the end of the book, so I'm pretty excited for that one as well. But all in all, I loved the Lady Tempts and Heir. It's just as good as the previous 2 books in the series. So far, this whole series has been kind of my favorite thing that's happened in the last year, and so I gave the Lady Tempts and Heir 5 stars. I have to admit, I finished this book about a week ago. I kind of sat on it so I could wait to put the review out until closer to the book's publication, which is tomorrow. But in the last week, I've just been completely absorbed into the Gilded Age Heiresses series again. I feel like I keep thinking about the characters, and I think I said in my previous video where I talked about The Devil and the Heiress, This is one of the few times I've been inspired so much by the characters in a book series that I went and made some Sims characters of them. I said I was going to share them. I'm not going to share them yet. I've decided I'm going to wait until the final book comes out before I really share it. I'm also not that good at making Sims, so you're not really missing much. But I just love these characters so much. I just feel like I feel so inspired by them and so connected with them, and I cannot speak highly enough for Harper St. George and the Gilded Age Heiresses series. I feel so connected to it, and I think that if you read the series, you'll also feel just as connected as I do. I just really loved all of it, and I cannot wait to read the fourth and final book in the series, which comes out later. But for now, do look out for the Lady Tempts and Heir, and if you haven't read the first 2 books in the series, pick those up as well, because the whole series is amazing. So I hope you enjoyed this book review video. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe. And to make sure you don't miss any more of my videos, please ring the bell to get all my notifications. I put out about 2 to 3 book review videos like this one every week, as well as one to do other videos like listicles and vlogs. So thanks for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!